Welcome back to the Mold Safe Home Build channel. I'm Dr. Karen Curitan, and this channel is all about sharing my journey with you to building a mold safe home for myself and my family. In part 1 through 3 of this series about RV life, I shared about why we chose to live full-time RV life while building our mold safe home, which RV we chose to avoid mold exposure while we were living RV life, where we've been living, and also all of the pros and cons from our experience of what it's like living RV life. So if you missed those other videos, definitely go back and watch those because I shared a lot of information that I'm not going to cover in this video. So in this video, I want to share the things that I didn't know before RV life that would have been nice to know and would have made adjusting to RV life smoother. These are all different from the pros and cons I already shared before. So let's dive into the things I wanted to share today. The first thing I think would have been good to know, and these are in no particular order, I might add, they're not ranked or anything, but the first thing I thought of is you're going to want to double filter your water. We learned from other RVers pretty early on not to trust just the inline water filters that will you hook up to the hose outside. So you filter that hose water before it comes into the RV. So you do want to have one of those in addition to the sediment filter that screws on to the main filter. You do want both of those, but you'll also want a secondary filter inside your RV, especially if you're using your RV water tanks, because all kinds of yucky things can grow in those RV water tanks, and you don't want to be drinking that. So what we did is we got countertop reverse osmosis filters from the brand One Drop, and we've been really happy with them. My husband did have one filter fail that he had to get replaced, but for the most part, they have worked seamlessly for over 6 months now. So with reverse osmosis, all of the minerals get removed in addition to all of the bad stuff. So you got good stuff getting removed along with bad stuff. And so you need to add trace minerals back to the water once it's gone through reverse osmosis. The One Drop company does offer remineralization filters with some of the models. And so that's also an option if you don't want to add trace minerals to your every glass of water that you are going to drink. My husband actually has a model that has the remineralization filters, and he thinks those are working great. I have a model that doesn't offer those. I'm adding the trace minerals drops from Trace Minerals Research to every bit of water that I drink that comes out of there, including the dog's water, because we started actually offering our dogs this reverse osmosis water. We were just offering them water from the tap that was only single filtered, but it seemed like they were actually getting sick off and on, and it might have been related to that. We just decided let's just eliminate that factor and give them the RO water as well, and they've been doing great since then. The water also tastes great. Once you put the minerals in, it tastes great, tastes perfect. So that's number one. Good to know. Number two. So, if you're doing full-time RV life and you're on the road all the time, you're going from one place to the next and whatever, and you also get rid of whatever place you were living permanently, then you're not going to have a full-time residential address anymore, right? So that was the case for us. We sold our last home and we had no actual residence anymore. And all we had was the RV, which was moving around. In that case, we had to get a digital mailbox in order to have a consistent mailing address where we could have mail sent from places like banks and the government for tax purposes and all that kind of stuff. We got a digital mailbox. We chose to get our digital mailbox in South Dakota and also to become residents there. You don't have to become residents in order to get a digital mailbox there, but we chose to do that because it's very easy to become a resident in South Dakota. It's super fast. You just need to be there for a little over 24 hours and go to the DMV and get a new driver's license. So we did that and also set up our digital mailbox there. We chose South Dakota because there's no income tax in South Dakota. So, at least for the period of time while we're full time on the road before we build our house, we won't be subject to state income tax, which was pretty high in Oregon. So, it was a nice little perk to do that. So basically, what happens is the digital mailbox is a business. They receive your mail for you. They basically let you know via email you've got something in the mail, and then they will either scan it, shred it, or forward it to you, depending on what you tell them to do with it. And yeah, it's an extra expense that you need to figure in, but it's been really necessary for us since we let go of our old address. And that address has been accepted in most situations, but in a few situations, like banks, a couple of banks didn't want to accept that as our physical address because it's technically a business's address. And so, in a couple of cases, we actually had to put a family member's physical address. But in most cases, this address works fine. And wherever we go, whenever they're like, "What's your address?" we give them that one, even though we're never actually there, but we will need to be there periodically. I think you technically have to go back every 5 years to update your license. But, anyways, that's irrelevant to us. We won't be doing RV life for that long, but just so you know. So, that's what full-time RVers do about having a mailing address. Okay, good to know. Number three. Your bank cards might get blocked regularly, depending on your bank, because you're changing locations a lot. That hasn't happened so much for me with my bank, but my husband's bank has been doing that somewhat frequently. I would say it happens at least each time we change locations, which, if you heard our other videos, doesn't happen super often, once a month max. But we are going to different states. And so, yeah, sometimes that gets his cards flagged, and it's been a hassle a couple times. Good to know. Number four, valuables are not safe on the road. We were actually robbed at one of our RV parks, and a lot of expensive stuff was stolen out of one of our vehicles. Frankly, the RVs are probably not very secure either. So, if you don't need to bring valuables on the road, don't bring them on the road. Store them in a safe deposit box or other appropriate storage place, depending on what it is. Yeah, it's just not a good idea to have them. And we've also talked to other RVers who have had this experience of getting things stolen. So just wanted to prevent that from happening to you. So the next thing, number five, that would have been good to know is that these ATC toy hauler trailers that we have are all 3 season. So all of their trailers are 3 season. I've wanted to gripe at them about this, but I haven't done it yet because it would really make a mold avoider's life so much easier if ATC made 4 season trailers. But this company, ATC, was really not thinking about the mold avoidance or mold illness community when they made their trailers. They were really focused on people recreating, and most people want to recreate for only 3 seasons of the year. What it means that they're 3 season is that they're not meant to be used in winter weather, and they don't have the insulation for that. They do have some, but it's very little. If you are going to have an ATC trailer, you're going to want to follow the warm weather in the winter to stay warm and also to avoid your water system from freezing, which can cause pipe leaks. And that's the last thing we want as people healing from mold. So, I know some people with RVs will attach a skirt around the bottom of the RV on the outside, and then they'll put space heaters underneath there to keep the bottom of the RV warm and protect pipes under the RV for freezing. But I'm not sure if anyone's doing that with an ATC, and I'm pretty sure ATC does not recommend it. They won't guarantee anything about things not freezing and pipes not breaking and stuff like that because they're just like, we didn't design these RVs for that. I have no experience with that and can't tell you if that would work or not, but ATC would not recommend it. Sixth thing that would have been good to know is that since we do have to follow the weather in these ATC RVs to avoid freezing temps, and we're also not using the built-in air conditioner because we want to avoid mold-related issues that are so common in air conditioners. We needed solid weather predictions to know where we should stay and when for the optimal temperature range for trailer life in these trailers. And climate change has meant that you cannot trust average weather data that you get from a lot of different weather websites like Weather Underground or AccuWeather or whatever the other ones are. Those places where you can go, what is the average weather in May? It's going to be averaging the decades of weather data that they have to tell you the typical temperatures during a typical month. And we have found that pretty much everywhere is hotter than it used to be in the summer. And you really need to rely on recent data from the last 3 to 4 years to know what to expect. So we found that the most reliable weather data came from timeanddate.com. Timeanddate.com has a historical weather data feature, and you can look at what the actual temperatures were for each day of the year. And so I looked at the last 3 years for the months we were considering in a given place. And then I would just see how many days did it go out of our ideal range? Would that be tolerable for us? Or would it cause freezing pipes? Like, I just looked at the last 3 years, every single day of the month. As an example, we were originally considering spending the winter in southeastern Arizona, not southwestern. They have definitely different weather in the winter. But we found that for the month of January, temperatures were below freezing a lot at night. And so we just decided we don't want to risk it. Let's go somewhere where that really doesn't happen so much in the winter. So Western Arizona and Southern California were better bets based on the last 3 years of weather data. So that's what we're doing. All right, good to know number seven. ATC RVs are really heavy. So you're going to need a pretty darn huge truck with a serious towing capacity to tow them. It's great for mold avoidance purposes that it's made of metal and these other materials that are not organic and food for mold. But the downside is you need a much bigger towing rig. So we have pretty small ATC trailers. Each of them is 20 feet. It's the ATC Play 450, and they're still 6,500 pounds. So we needed trucks with at least 10,000 pound towing capacity. If you didn't know, you never want to max out your towing capacity with the weight of what you're towing. So what I have been told is you want to aim for 2/3 of the capacity. So if you have a 6,500 pound trailer, you need at least a 10,000 pound towing capacity for your truck. Just keep that in mind that you may have a great truck right now, but it may not be big enough to tow an ATC, and you may have to trade in, get a new truck, something like that. So you might have to figure that in as an expense. And yeah, of course, big trucks are also gas guzzlers, right? Keep that in mind as well. But the newer ones are better than, I guess, the older ones as far as that goes. Good to know number eight. Oh, I just want to say one other thing about big trucks. When you're living in pretty small RVs, they don't have a ton of storage on the bottom of the RV like big RVs do. If you look at really big RVs, they've got all these awesome compartments underneath the living space in the trailer where you can store so much stuff, like huge amounts of stuff, depending on the size of your trailer. These trailers only have one little storage compartment like that. And so all we can really fit in it is like some outdoor chairs and the like waterproof rug that we'll use in some places outside the trailer, and some tools needed, and our sewer hoses, electric plug-in, and the water filters and hose. So that's pretty much all we can fit in ours. That being said, if when you're thinking about your towing vehicle, you might want a lot of capacity in the bed of the truck for storing other stuff that you don't want to bring in your trailer. Stuff that's going to be dirty stuff or just not stuff you really need or want in your space all the time. So we have some generators as an example that we put in the bed of the truck, and some laundry gear and stuff like that. So because our trailers are small, that would take up a lot of space if we had them inside. And so that's where we tote them around. And so we have actually 8-foot beds on our trailers, and we have used them. They've been really helpful for us. The downside to those are that it's really hard to park. They stick out past any normal parking space. They're absolutely enormous. And if you're going into town to the grocery store or the pharmacy or whatever, it's going to be a lot more of a pain in the ass to park that thing. We just generally don't tend to take them downtown in small, tight spaces and whatnot, because the turning radius also is so bad that even making right turns when there's people in the other lane next to where you're trying to turn can be really hard. Keep that in mind. The extra storage in the back of the truck can be really clutch, and also the size of the truck can make driving not so fun at other times. So, number eight. We don't find that manually leveling our RVs works with these ATCs because they're way too heavy. So the bottom of your trailer will have these jacks on it, and the jacks will either be automatic, like electric and self-leveling, so you just press a button and they figure out how to level themselves, or they'll be manual. And ours are manual, and that means that you either have to use this crank, this hand tool to crank them up, or you use a drill, and the drill has a special bit on it that will rotate the end of the jack and spin it down. So these jacks need to touch the ground and keep your RV from rocking when you're staying in place at your campsite. But because these ATCs are so freaking heavy, we can rarely get them actually level. Because once those jacks hit the ground, it's just like we've bent the manual crank tool and you just can't, the drill just doesn't get enough torque to really be able to continue lifting that. If your campsite is not very level, your RV is really not going to be level either with one of these ATC RVs. You may want to consider, if you get one of these super heavy RVs, get the upgrade to electric powered self leveling jacks. All right, good to know. Number nine. If you don't have a national insurance plan, you may not have coverage in the areas that you're going to be going to. So if you're following the weather like we are and you're spending time in a lot of different states, you might not have insurance coverage where you're going. Some insurance plans are really only state plans, meaning your coverage only works in that one state, like Oregon, as an example. This is definitely the case for state Medicaid plans, but it can also be the case for some commercial plans, which we didn't know until we started researching what we needed to know for full-time RV life. And so luckily, we do have national insurance coverage through my husband's job, but apparently some insurance plans are state only, so it's just something good to know. And you can decide what you want to do about that. Good to know. Number 10, the Wi-Fi at most RV parks is really very terrible generally, and you're just not going to get high bandwidth, and some places you go will even not have good cell service. In fact, one place where we stayed for 2 months had no cell service. So you couldn't use your phone as a hotspot either. And we found Starlink to be essential for working on the road or for even having enough Wi-Fi to be able to stream services like Netflix and whatnot. So Starlink has been really easy to use other than the setup. I do not recommend getting Starlink from Home Depot or another store because they make it stupidly complicated to set up for some reason. Just order it directly from Starlink. We have the larger one that you can use on a roam plan. We do not have the mini. And the reason is because we can get much better speeds on the larger one. So we have the larger one and we got a tripod for it that it stands on, clicks into, and you can move that tripod around to get the optimal satellite visibility. So it's worked really well for us, really quite seamless. It's only gone down very occasionally, and it's usually back up within a few minutes. That being said, it will not work for you if you're going to really heavily treed places. We did go to one campground where the trees were so thick that we really could not get a signal, not enough for it to be useful. And so we had to abandon staying at that RV park. And now, when we look at photos of RV parks before we book staying at them, we make sure that they're not completely treed in because we won't be able to work in that case. So do not depend on the park's Wi-Fi. It's not going to be enough. However, if you go to a place that has cell service, some people will use the hotspot on their phone and they will get a cell service booster or something like that. We didn't get that. I'm not going to go into any detail on that, but there are other options. And we've talked to some people on the road who have had both big hotspot plans on their phone so they could use that, and Starlink so that they had backups for their backups so they could absolutely work wherever they were. All right, good to know. Number 11. I do talk about this in the cons video a little bit, but getting repairs done on your RV when you live in it full time is pretty tricky. And mobile mechanics are definitely the way to go for repairs, but don't expect repairs to be an easy process, at least with ATC. So I'll tell you how it's worked with ATC. I have no idea how it works with other manufacturers, but ATCs have a warranty on everything for the first year, and we're still in our first year of ownership. And so all the repairs that we're trying to get done, we're needing to get them done through ATC's warranty. So, if you're going to use a mobile mechanic, which they don't like ATC, they want you to take it to one of their shops that works with ATCs regularly, which, by the way, can be really far away from wherever you're staying, but that's what they want you to do. Again, I said this in another video, but ATC really doesn't seem to have a lot of experience with people doing full-time RV life. And so that's just one of those things that makes that very obvious that they want you to just drop your RV off for an unlimited amount of time at a shop when it's where you live. And so when you take an RV to a shop, most shops are pretty busy. And so it can take them quite a while to get the thing repaired. So you might be leaving it there for weeks or even months if they had their way about how long they could take to repair it. And part of that is not the shop's fault. It's also related to their communication they're having with ATC and how quickly they can get the parts. ATC doesn't necessarily send everything overnight shipping. Found that out the hard way as well. Sometimes it might take 2 weeks even to get the parts that you need, but if you take it into a shop, they'll expect you to leave it there for those whole 2 weeks usually, and that's just a no-go. Like unless you can afford to pay for a hotel room or an Airbnb for an unlimited amount of time while your home is in the shop. So, anyways, we went through that process. We attempted that with ATC because that's what they really wanted for one of our repairs. And it was a disaster. Nothing ended up getting fixed, and we still didn't have our home for 2 weeks. So now we're going the mobile mechanic route. So here's how that works with ATC. For mobile repairs being done under warranty, ATC requires that you have a mobile mechanic come out to assess the problem and then provide ATC with an estimate to fix it. They want that up front because I guess they've been gouged by mechanics before when an estimate wasn't provided to them up front. That diagnostic visit that the mobile mechanic does to wherever you're staying to check out the issue, ATC will not pay for it. And we found that most mobile mechanics charge about $150 to $170 for that visit. So once ATC approves the quote they've been given, then ATC will ship the parts necessary to you at the RV park where you're staying. And this can be a little tricky too because sometimes the parts you need are really big and have to be shipped via freight shipping in huge wooden crates. That's the case for us because we've had 4 windows fail, interior parts of the windows, so it hasn't been like a water damage issue, but interior parts of the windows have failed, and so they needed to ship us 4 new windows, and so those came in huge wood boxes. But yeah, those are not typically the kind of things that can be held at a FedEx location and you can just pick it up whenever you want. Sometimes those boxes are even so heavy they need to be lifted with a forklift. So keep that in mind. We have luckily been able to move ours. My husband is quite strong, so that's been fortunate, but we've been able to move the boxes of windows and whatnot. But they've just been sitting at our site outside our trailer waiting for the repair to be done. And sometimes ATC does not send all the parts that you need to do the repair, and sometimes they send the wrong parts. So it can take quite a while actually to get everything you need assembled, and that's been the case for us. We've been trying to do this for weeks, and we thought we had everything we needed. And then the mobile mechanic came to do the repairs, and he was like, "Oh no, you still need this and this." And it's literally just taking months for us to try to get these repairs done, and it's getting ridiculous, honestly, if you ask me. But yeah, if you're needing to get repairs done, make sure you're going to be in one place for a while, like at least a month, because, like I'm saying, there's so many steps in the process of getting to the point where it actually gets repaired that you don't want to get everything started with one mobile mechanic and then be like, oops, and now we have to move again and start all over with a new mobile mechanic in the new place. Make sure you're going to be there a bit. That being said, doing mobile RV repairs, we had some done yesterday. It's still so much better than leaving your home at a shop for an indefinite period of time while they sort out the repairs. We will do mobile mechanic every time going forward, but it's still a hassle. All right, good to know number 12. From a mold avoidance slash water damage avoidance perspective, I would recommend getting a full-size bathroom in your RV where the shower and the toilet are separate if you can afford a bigger model with a bigger bathroom. The closet style bathrooms where the toilet is inside the shower has some definite downsides as we found out. There are just more places that are depending on good sealing and caulking, and caulk tends to fail pretty quickly in RVs because you might get more swings in temperature, higher heat, more cold, and also because it's moving 7.0 earthquake every time you're driving down the road. And those seals tend to fail. And we've had to get things recalked already, even though we're only 6 months in. So, yeah, that's one thing. The other thing is that if you're in a closet style bathroom, like the water from the shower staying inside the bathroom where the drain is depends on the seals on the door being designed really well and being in good shape so that when you open the door, water doesn't just fall out on the ground. We've had some issue with that, not a large amount of water, but a little amount of water on this continuous vinyl floor. So it's not susceptible to water damage, but it's still just, this isn't a great design. We're not super happy with it. So, if I could do it again, I'd probably get a bigger RV that has the toilet separate from the shower. All right, good to know. Number 13. On a positive note, we were glad that we chose models of RVs that had bunk beds. And they also had a bed that raised and lowered from the ceiling called a Happy Jack bed. So the bed is out of the space and you have more space during the day, which is fantastic. And then we use the bunks for storage. They provide actually a lot of storage for when you're living this minimalist lifestyle in a small space. And if we didn't have the bunks, I don't know if we would have been able to do it, honestly. I just don't think there would have been enough storage space for us to even store our very minimal amount of belongings. I recommend bunk beds, especially if they are not where you're going to sleep and you have them as extra space where you can use them as storage. Because ATCs are designed as toy haulers typically for people to be able to tote around their four wheelers or their side by sides or their dirt bikes, they don't tend to have as much furniture in them, including, I think, cabinets. So the cabinets that we do have are fantastic. I love them. They're all metal and they're great. However, they're pretty small. So we wouldn't have been able to store a lot of things in them because of their size, such as clothes. What else do we put in the bunk? We put paper towels and dog crates and the Instapot, which is too big to fit in a cabinet, all those kinds of things. So I know you'll find use for that space too. Good to know. Number 14. If you work from the road, we recommend having more than one table slash desk in your RV space so that one can be dedicated to your work setup and you don't have to break it down every day. And the other one can be used for food prep, eating, and other stuff that you need a surface for, especially if you have a tiny kitchen like us. Our kitchens are really quite tiny little L-shaped spaces, as they are in many RVs. And just in order to have enough space sometimes to have the cutting board out and using that, and also be cooking on the stove and a couple other things at one time, you need more counter space. And so having an extra table that can be for that, that I don't have to fight my work setup in order to do that, has been really clutch. And I'll just say one other thing. If there's one piece of furniture to have in your RV that the RV does not come with, it's going to be a really excellent, breathable, comfortable work chair. For us, at least, because we have to work on the road, we're not retired. This has been so critical for us. Absolutely none of the chairs that ATC provides would have been sufficient for working from all day. And so this has been a great investment for us. So I would suggest that you do that if you're going to work from the road. All right. So I hope that was helpful. It gave you some things to consider and think about if you're considering RV life as part of your mold healing journey. If it was helpful to you, please subscribe, leave me a comment below. If you know somebody else who is being poisoned by mold in their home and might want to learn about living RV life, as part of their healing, please share this video series with them because I don't think there's a lot of information about this out there on the internet. At least it was hard for me to find when we were going to do this. So that's partly why I'm making these videos. All right. And if you yourself are looking for somebody to help you heal from mold illness or nervous system dysregulation, feel free to check out my links below and connect with me. All right. Thanks so much for watching. I will see you in the next video.